What the Buddha Taught by Dr. Walpola Rahula. Chapter 1. The Buddhist Attitude of Mind. Among the founders of religions, the Buddha, if we are permitted to call him the founder of a religion in the popular sense of the term, was the only teacher who did not claim to be other than a human being, pure and simple. Other teachers were either God, or his incarnations in different forms, or inspired by him. The Buddha was not only a human being. He claimed no inspiration from any god or external power either. He attributed all his realization, attainments, and achievements to human endeavor and human intelligence. A man, and only a man, can become a Buddha. Every man has within himself the potentiality of becoming a Buddha, if he so wills it and endeavors. We can call the Buddha a man par excellence. He was so perfect in his humanness that he came to be regarded later in popular religion almost as superhuman. Man's position, according to Buddhism, is supreme. Man is his own master, and there is no higher being or power that sits in judgment over his destiny. One is one's own refuge. Who else could be the refuge? Said the Buddha. He admonished his disciples to be a refuge unto themselves, and never to seek refuge in or help from anybody else. He taught and encouraged and stimulated each person to develop himself and to work out his own emancipation, for man has the power to liberate himself from all bondage through his own personal effort and intelligence. The Buddha says, "You should do your work, for the Tathagatas only teach the way." Footnote: Tathagata means one who has come to know the truth, one who has discovered the truth. This term is usually used by the Buddha referring to himself and to the Buddhas in general. End of footnote. If the Buddha is to be called a savior at all, it is only in the sense that he discovered and showed the path to liberation, nirvana. But we must tread the path ourselves. It is on this principle of individual responsibility that the Buddha allows freedom to his disciples. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha says that he never thought of controlling the Sangha, the order of monks. Nor did he want the Sangha to depend on him. Footnote: Sangha literally means community, but in Buddhism this term denotes the community of Buddhist monks, which is the order of monks. Buddha, Dhamma, the teaching, and Sangha, order, are known as the Tisarana, the three refuges, or the Tiratana, triple gem. End of footnote. He said that there was no esoteric doctrine in his teaching, nothing hidden in the, quote, closed fist of the teacher, Akariyamuti. Or, to put it in other words, there never was anything up his sleeve. The freedom of thought allowed by the Buddha is unheard of elsewhere in the history of religions. This freedom is necessary because, according to the Buddha, man's emancipation depends on his own realization of the truth, and not on the benevolent grace of a god or any external power as a reward for his obedient good behavior. The Buddha once visited a small town called Kesaputta in the kingdom of Kosala. The inhabitants of this town were known by the common name Kalama. When they heard that the Buddha was in their town, the Kalamas paid him a visit and told him Quote, Sir, there are some recluses and brahmanas who visit Kasaputa. They explain and illumine only their own doctrines, and despise, condemn, and spurn others' doctrines. Then come other recluses and brahmanas, and they too, in their turn, explain and illumine only their own doctrines, and despise, condemn, and spurn others' doctrines. But for us, sir, we have always doubt and perplexity as to who among these venerable recluses and brahmanas spoke the truth, and who spoke falsehood. End quote. Then the Buddha gave them this advice, unique in the history of religions. Quote, Yes, Kalamas, it is proper that you have doubt, that you have perplexity, for a doubt has arisen in a matter which is doubtful. Now look you, Kalamas, do not be led by reports, or tradition, or hearsay. Be not led by the authority of religious texts, nor by mere logic or inference, nor by considering appearances, nor by the delight in speculative opinions, nor by seeming possibilities, nor by the idea, this is our teacher. But, O Kalamas, when you know for yourselves that certain things are unwholesome, akusala, and wrong, and bad, then give them up. And when you know for yourselves that certain things are wholesome, kusala, and good, then accept them and follow them. End quote. The Buddha went even further. He told the bhikkhus that a disciple should examine even the Tathagata, Buddha himself, so that he, the disciple, might be fully convinced of the true value of the teacher whom he followed. According to the Buddha's teaching, doubt, vichikicha, is one of the 5 hindrances, nivarana, to the clear understanding of truth and to spiritual progress, or for that matter to any progress. Footnote. The 5 hindrances are 1. Sensual lust, 2. Ill will, 3. Physical and mental torpor and languor, 4. Restlessness and worry, 5. Doubt. End of footnote. Doubt, however, is not a sin, because there are no articles of faith in Buddhism. In fact, there is no sin in Buddhism, as sin is understood in some religions. The root of all evil is ignorance, avidya, and false views, btih. It is an undeniable fact that as long as there is doubt, perplexity, wavering, no progress is possible. It is also equally undeniable that there must be doubt as long as one does not understand or see clearly. But in order to progress further, it is absolutely necessary to get rid of doubt. To get rid of doubt, one has to see clearly. There is no point in saying that one should not doubt or one should believe. Just to say, I believe, does not mean that you understand and see. When a student works on a mathematical problem, he comes to a stage beyond which he does not know how to proceed, and where he is in doubt and perplexity. As long as he has this doubt, he cannot proceed. If he wants to proceed, he must resolve this doubt. And there are ways of resolving that doubt. Just to say, I believe, or I do not doubt, will certainly not solve the problem. To force oneself to believe and to accept a thing without understanding is political and not spiritual or intellectual. The Buddha was always eager to dispel doubt. Even just a few minutes before his death, he requested his disciples several times to ask him if they had any doubts about his teaching, and not to feel sorry later that they could not clear those doubts. But the disciples were silent. What he said then was touching. Quote, "If it is through respect for the teacher that you do not ask anything, let even one of you inform his friend, i.e., let one tell his friend so that the latter may ask the question on the other's behalf." Not only the freedom of thought, but also the tolerance allowed by the Buddha is astonishing to the student of the history of religions. Once, in Nalanda, a prominent and wealthy householder named Upali, a well-known lay disciple of Nigantha Nataputta, Jaina Mahavira, was expressly sent by Mahavira himself to meet the Buddha and defeat him in argument on certain points in the theory of karma, because the Buddha's views on the subject were different from those of Mahavira. Footnote: Mahavira, founder of Jainism, was a contemporary of the Buddha, and was probably a few years older than the Buddha. End of footnote. Quite contrary to expectations, Upali, at the end of the discussion, was convinced that the views of the Buddha were right and those of his master were wrong. So he begged the Buddha to accept him as one of his lay disciples, Upasaka. But the Buddha asked him to reconsider it, and not to be in a hurry, for, quote, considering carefully is good for well-known men like you. When Upali expressed his desire again, the Buddha requested him to continue to respect and support his old religious teachers, as he used to. In the 3rd century BC, the great Buddhist Emperor Ashoka of India, following this noble example of tolerance and understanding, honored and supported all other religions in his vast empire. In one of his edicts carved on rock, the original of which one may even read today, the emperor declared, quote, "One should not honor only one's own religion and condemn the religion of others, but one should honor others' religions for this or that reason. So doing, one helps one's own religion to grow and renders service to the religions of others too. In acting otherwise, one digs the grave of one's own religion, and also does harm to other religions. Whosoever honors his own religion and condemns other religions, does so indeed through devotion to his own religion, thinking, 'I will glorify my own religion.' But on the contrary, in so doing he injures his own religion more gravely. So concord is good. Let all listen, and be willing to listen to the doctrines professed by others." End quote. We should add here that this spirit of sympathetic understanding should be applied today not only in the matter of religious doctrine, but elsewhere as well. This spirit of tolerance and understanding has been from the beginning one of the most cherished ideals of Buddhist culture and civilization. That is why there is not a single example of persecution or the shedding of a drop of blood in converting people to Buddhism, or in its propagation during its long history of 2,500 years. It spread peacefully all over the continent of Asia, having more than 500 million adherents today. Violence, in any form, under any pretext whatsoever, is absolutely against the teaching of the Buddha. The question has often been asked, is Buddhism a religion or a philosophy? It does not matter what you call it. Buddhism remains what it is, whatever label you may put on it. The label is immaterial. Even the label, Buddhism, which we give to the teaching of the Buddha, is of little importance. The name one gives to it is inessential. Quote, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet." In the same way, truth needs no label. It is neither Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, nor Muslim. It is not the monopoly of anybody. Sectarian labels are a hindrance to the independent understanding of truth, and they produce harmful prejudices in men's minds. This is true not only in intellectual and spiritual matters, but also in human relations. When, for instance, we meet a man, we do not look on him as a human being, but we put a label on him, such as English, French, German, American, or Jew, and regard him with all the prejudices associated with that label in our mind. Yet he may be completely free from those attributes which we have put on him. People are so fond of discriminative labels that they even go to the length of putting them on human qualities and emotions common to all. So they talk of different brands of charity, as for example of Buddhist charity, of Christian charity, and look down upon other brands of charity. But charity cannot be sectarian. It is neither Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, nor Muslim. The love of a mother for her child is neither Buddhist nor Christian. It is mother love. Human qualities and emotions like love, charity, compassion, tolerance, patience, friendship, desire, hatred, ill will, ignorance, conceit, etc., need no sectarian labels. They belong to no particular religions. To the seeker after truth, it is immaterial from where an idea comes. The source and development of an idea is a matter for the academic. In fact, in order to understand truth, it is not necessary even to know whether the teaching comes from the Buddha or from anywhere else. What is essential is seeing the thing, understanding it. There is an important story in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 140, which illustrates this. The Buddha once spent a night in a potter's shed. In the same shed there was a young recluse who had arrived there earlier. Footnote: in India, potters' sheds are spacious and quiet. References are made in the Pali texts to ascetics and recluses, as well as to the Buddha himself, spending a night in a potter's shed during their wanderings. End of footnote. They did not know each other. The Buddha observed the recluse and thought to himself, "Pleasant are the ways of this young man. It would be good if I should ask about him." So the Buddha asked him, "O bhikkhu, in whose name have you left home?" Footnote: it is interesting to note here that the Buddha addresses this recluse as bhikkhu, which term is used for Buddhist monks. In the sequel, it will be seen that he was not a bhikkhu, not a member of the order of the Sangha, for he asked the Buddha to admit him into the order. Perhaps in the days of the Buddha the term bhikkhu was used at times even for other ascetics indiscriminately, or the Buddha was not very strict in the use of the term. Bhikkhu means mendicant, or one who begs for food, and perhaps it was used here in its literal and original sense. But today the term bhikkhu is used only of Buddhist monks, especially in Theravada countries like Ceylon, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and in Chittagong. End of footnote. Continued. "O bhikkhu, in whose name have you left home? Or who is your master? Or whose doctrine do you like?" "O friend," answered the young man, "there is the recluse Gautama, a Sakyan's scion, who left the Sakya family to become a recluse. There is high repute abroad of him that he is an arahant, a fully enlightened one. In the name of that blessed one I have become a recluse. He is my master, and I like his doctrine." "Where does that blessed one, the arahant, and fully enlightened one, live at the present time?" asked the Buddha. "In the countries to the north, friend, there is a city called Savatthi. It is there that the blessed one, the arahant, the fully enlightened one, is now living," replied the bhikkhu. "Have you ever seen him, that blessed one? Would you recognize him if you saw him?" asked the Buddha. "I have never seen that blessed one, nor should I recognize him if I saw him," replied the bhikkhu. The Buddha realized that it was in his name that this unknown young man had left home and become a recluse. But without divulging his own identity, he said, "O bhikkhu, I will teach you the doctrine. Listen and pay attention. I will speak." "Very well, friend," said the young man in assent. Then the Buddha delivered to this young man a most remarkable discourse explaining truth, the gist of which is given later. It was only at the end of the discourse that this young recluse, whose name was Pukasati, realized that the person who spoke to him was the Buddha himself. So he got up, went before the Buddha, bowed down at the feet of the master, and apologized to him for calling him friend unknowingly. Footnote. The term used is avuso, which means friend. It is a respectful term of address among equals, but disciples never use this term addressing the Buddha. Instead, they use the term btih, which approximately means sir or lord. At the time of the Buddha, the members of his order of monks, Sangha, addressed one another as avuso, friend. But before his death, the Buddha instructed younger monks to address their elders as bante, sir, or ayasma, venerable. But elders should address the younger members by name, or as avuso, friend. This practice is continued up to the present day in the Sangha. End of footnote. He then begged the Buddha to ordain him and admit him into the order of the Sangha. The Buddha asked him whether he had the alms bowl and the robes ready. A bhikkhu must have 3 robes and the alms bowl for begging food. When Pukasati replied in the negative, the Buddha said that the Tathagatas would not ordain a person unless the alms bowl and the robes were ready. So Pukasati went out in search of an alms bowl and robes, but unfortunately was savaged by a cow and died. Later, when this sad news reached the Buddha, he announced that Pukasati was a wise man who had already seen truth, who had attained the penultimate stage in the realization of nirvana, and that he was born in a realm where he would become an arahant, and finally pass away, never to return to this world again. Footnote. An arahant is a person who has liberated himself from all defilements and impurities such as desire, hatred, ill will, ignorance, pride, conceit, etc. He has attained the 4th or the highest and ultimate stage in the realization of nirvana, and is full of wisdom, compassion, and such pure and noble qualities. Pukasati had attained at that moment only the 3rd stage, which is technically called anagami, never returner. The 2nd stage is called Sakadagami, once returner, and the first stage is called Sotapanna, stream entrant. End of footnote. From this story it is quite clear that when Pukasati listened to the Buddha and understood his teaching, he did not know who was speaking to him, or whose teaching it was. He saw truth,